Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast, episode number 80. Michael Montgomery, veteran, hunter, QDMA rep, and Buck Nasty, the 203-inch Ohio whitetail giant. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hi, I'm Tim Burnett with Solo Hunter, and you're listening to my favorite podcast, the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.
Hi, this is Larry Weissoon from Trailing the Hunter's Moon, and you're listening to my favorite podcast on iTunes, the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.
Hi, this is Jackie Bushman of Buckmasters. You're listening to my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.
Welcome to the show. This is Jay Scott, your host of the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast. Can't be more excited than I am right now because we're on our way to the ATA, and I'm taking this other guy over here, Dusty Phillips, with me. What's going on, Dusty?
Bam! That's what's going on. We're headed to the ATA show. We're going to dig into this ATA show and report back on what it's all about.
You're driving this time, right? Like, I'm going to be riding with you?
Yeah, absolutely. We got a brand new Chevrolet headed to the show.
Can I drive here and there? Because I haven't driven a new Chevy in a very long time.
We might be able to pencil that in.
All right, that's cool. And you're going to show me around your hometown a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to hook up with Ed Waite, and we're going to go to dinner with Ed, Buckmaster's Master Score, Ed Waite. Shout out to Ed every time we get a chance. You know, maybe someday he'll join us on the show and talk a little bit about scoring deer.
I can't wait to meet Ed. Ed's like one of the people that we frequently refer to on this show, and it's finally good to put a name.
A face with a name.
Face with a name, exactly. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I think we're going to have an excellent weekend and be able to hang out. It's something that I thoroughly enjoy, spending some time with you, Jay, and I don't know if it's vice versa that way, but
no, it definitely is. I don't know why you'd even say that, man.
I'm just messing around with you, but we're going to enjoy each other, and we're going to meet some new people and check out some awesome products that the ATA is known for the latest, greatest up and coming products on the market as far as the hunting industry. So it's going to be very interesting, and we're going to meet up with some people with CarrieZ, and we're going to try to hook up with a lot of people at the ATA that's been guests on the show, and future guests we're going to meet. So
yep, exactly. Hey, I got some good feedback this week from I got an email from a guy named Dan Danforth, Big Dan Danforth. I'd like to read it to you. He says, I love the podcast. Hey, Jay and Dusty, I am from Harrisonville, Missouri. I love the podcast, and I was a first-time deer hunter this year, and after an unsuccessful hunting rifle season, I was left wanting more and more, which happens to everybody, I would think, right, Dusty?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I discovered the Big Buck Registry podcast on Stitcher, listened to episode 73, and after that began from episode number 1, which I'm glad you went back to episode 1. Not our greatest work, but the sound quality has always been decent. Your podcast is helping me become more prepared for my 2015 season and is instilling in me with confidence that I take the information that I have obtained and apply some of it to my hunt. I can be successful in laying the creeper on a deer in 2015. Keep up the good work. Big Dan Danforth, Harrisonville, Missouri. Is that not a great email?
That is a great email. We wish Big Dan the best of luck in 2015. And we hope that you take everything that we offer on the podcast and utilize it right there in the woods, in your whitetail woods, and take your hunt to the next level. That's what it's all about,
Yeah. And, this stuff, although we're producing the show and all that stuff, I learn a ton by listening to the guests that we have on. I learn a lot from you. I learn a lot from our fans and our Facebook followers. I just learn a lot about what they like, what they don't like. It's kind of fascinating. But one of the things that the podcast does for me personally is, although we are the ones conducting the interviews, that it gets me excited about deer hunting even more than I used to, or even more than I used to get by myself, which is cool. And I think it's like this social acceptance and hearing the energy and passion behind people's hunting. It makes me want to go out and hunt more. And all I have to do is turn on to a episode, and man, if I, for whatever reason, as hunting sometimes goes, if you're not seeing the deer you want to see, or you've been at it for a long time and you're not getting the results you want, I turn on a podcast, I get re-energized, and I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm out in the woods. See ya.
Yeah, it's the craziest energy that you can ever experience.
Right. How is that possible? You can get that energized from listening to somebody else talk about their hunt. It's awesome.
It's one of them things where you hear it from other people, and that's what excites me the most. We just got that email. You just read the email, and that right there inspires me to do the best that I can, and I know it does you too, Jay, to bring the best cards to the table that we can bring, and find the best guests that we can pull information and relay it back to the listener. That's yes. What drives me to be what we are. The Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. It is stronger than it's ever been. It's going to stay strong, and we're going to keep pushing forward for the listeners.
Yep, absolutely. And I know, we kind of have a general format that we like to try to find guests for. So, and for example, we like to talk to the passionate deer hunter that had a successful hunt. We like to talk to the celebrity deer hunter that might have a television show. We like to talk to the collegiate person that might be a professor or doctor or something like that in the field, something related to hunting, whether it's deer biology or maybe Lyme disease, for example. That's definitely an upcoming subject matter we're going to be talking about with a doctor and somebody that's actually gone through Lyme disease. Those types of things that occur in the field that other people need to know about.
Yeah, it's all information that needs to be embedded in your mind that, for one, can save your life.
Yes.
We don't talk about hunting safety because we don't care. We talk about it because we want you to utilize it, and we want you to use it and be able to come back the following Saturday and hear another show. The Lyme disease, that's something that's very easily overlooked, but it's something that's very serious.
Yes, very serious, semi-preventable, but not really. But we're going to talk to somebody that actually went through it, a hunter, a friend of ours, and we're going to speak to some people that are doctors that can help us understand the whole thing behind it and how it works and how to prevent it and how to treat it if you get it, which is probably the more likely scenario.
Yeah, there's a whole lot more to the whitetail hunting than just your bow, your shotgun, your rifle, your camouflage. There's so much more that needs to be brought up.
Right. Exactly. Now, along those notes, we're speaking with one of those passionate hunters today, and it's somebody that we talked to for quite a long time. But I love his passion. I love what he's not only doing in the field hunting-wise, but what he's doing out of the field for the deer herds, and I just can't thank him enough for being a veteran and defending the United States. That's just an overall theme of this show, actually, and you'll hear kind of how this whole thing plays out in this particular story.
It's one thing to be a hunter. It's one thing to be a conservationist, and we try to get guests on that combined, the conservation, the hunting, everything together, and just added to it this time with being a veteran and what he does for the United States of America. It's all combined here. You're going to have a great variety. You're going to learn some things about deer conservation and what you can do in your area that will help your herd. What they've got going there with the quality deer management in New York. That's phenomenal.
Yes. We're speaking to Mike Montgomery, who is a veteran of Afghanistan, and the story starts there, where a bow and in Afghanistan. So take a bow overseas in Afghanistan and then bring it forward to just a recent hunt with that same bow from Afghanistan, and hang a 203-inch mega monster from Ohio on your wall.
It's a phenomenal story, and I'm so ready to talk with Michael, and let's get this going.
Let's stop chatting about it. Let's just do it. Mike Montgomery, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast. How are you, sir?
Doing pretty good. How you doing tonight?
I could not be better, honestly.
That's good.
Just another beautiful day in paradise.
Oh yes, oh yes.
So, Michael, where are you from right now?
Currently, right now, I'm sitting at my house in Hoosick Falls, New York.
You were in Vermont the other day, as I recall.
Yes, yeah, I work in Vermont. I do some veteran outreach work over in Vermont State as a veteran outreach specialist. So I work in Vermont, and where I work from where I live across the border is about a 10 to 15 minute drive.
Gotcha. All right, so we're kind of close. I'm in New Hampshire. Yeah. You're in Vermont, bordering states, so we're not far from each other.
No.
Well, the reason that you're joining us, and Dusty is on the other line with me. Dusty, say hi.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, absolutely. I am here. And Michael Montgomery, what a great buck.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. The reason that you caught our attention is the buck. However, you have a very, very interesting story to tell, and that's more interesting than the buck, if you ask me. But it all kind of connects between being in Afghanistan and the military and shooting a big deer, which is all things we absolutely 100% support here on the Big Buck Podcast. And I'd like to hear the entire story, if that's cool.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome, man. Let's start from the beginning. I don't know where the beginning is exactly, but let's go back to Afghanistan and the purchase of a bow and arrow.
Okay. Back in 2010, the unit that I'm with over in Bennington, Vermont, it's a National Guard unit.
Yeah.
Cavalry squadron.
Bennington, Vermont, the home of the Bennington Monument.
Yes.
Yeah.
We were over in Bagram, Afghanistan. We were kind of in a lull, getting ready to come home. We had about a month left, and the missions that we were going on weren't as often as they were towards the beginning of the mission or the deployment. So when I was probably from the ages of 10 to 12, I used to shoot competition archery, 3D shoots on the weekends with my father, and after about 12 years old, I just kind of stopped doing it, being a kid and not practicing enough. And so I think my father ended up selling a bow to another person that could use it. And I just pretty much got rid of the bow altogether and never really got back into it. So as time went on and stuff like that, my dad's an archery hunter and things like that, he'd always told me, if you ever get a chance to archery hunt, do it. You'll take your rifle season and you'll throw it right out the window. Deer come in closer, it's more of a rush.
Sure.
Pretty much everything you love about it.
Oh, heck yeah. And what year is this again?
2010.
2010. All right. So that's about 4 years ago.
Yep. We actually, our anniversary of coming back home was on the 13th. So we've been home for 4 years and 4 days as of today.
No kidding.
Yep.
That's awesome. I'm glad you're home, man, but thank you for what you did.
No, thank you for your support. I appreciate it. So I'm sitting in what they call a MWR. It's a morale, wealth, and relaxation place. You can Skype your family back home, make phone calls, check your Facebook, play video games, watch movies. Just kind of a way to relax a little bit, get the war frame of mind out of your head for a little while and just relax. So,
sure.
Being over there, you're making tax-free money, and I got the idea in my head. Maybe I'll take up bow hunt when I get home. So I got on the computer one day and I was looking around and just looking for how much bows were going to be because I know they're expensive there and stuff like that. So I had happened to come across Bowtech's website, and at the time they were running a military overseas discount.
Really?
So,
okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm down with that. That's cool.
So I got looking into the whole how it worked out, and basically what they were doing is they were giving you a bow ready to shoot. And, you'd get it for a reduced price for being a military member overseas, and they would mail it directly overseas to you. So
no kidding.
Looking around and,
that's pretty cool.
That is real cool.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Matthews was another one that was doing it at the time, and there was another company. I can't remember who that was. I want to say it might have been PSC, but I know Matthews and Bowtech were definitely one of them. I don't know if the program runs anymore or not, but I know there was a few of them that were doing it at the time.
Sure.
So because I hadn't, pulled back a bow in a long, long time, and I didn't really know what I was getting into and stuff like that, so I kind of did some research, and I ended up getting it was a year-old model. That was part of the deal too. You weren't going to get this year's model; you were going to get a year-old model. So I ended up getting
that's okay. The technology is still fantastic, so you're not sweating that.
Oh right? Yeah. So I ended up getting a 2009 Bowtech Captain. And when it showed up in Afghanistan, I think I literally waited a week and a half, and it was in, which was very surprising to me.
Holy smokes.
Oh yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, very fantastic. So I mean, and that was part of the deal too. It had to be mailed overseas.
Right.
So it was a way for them to get around, looking at military IDs and looking at your DD-214, which states that you served time overseas. So they actually needed the address to where I was to get around all of that.
Gotcha.
So when I actually got it, I pulled it out, and the first thing I noticed right off the bat was how much lighter this was compared to when I was 12.
Yeah.
15 years later, the technology changed.
Yeah.
I used to shoot a high country Phantom bow.
Sure.
I remember being 12. This thing was the heaviest thing on earth to me.
Right. How old are you now, Michael?
33 years old.
33. All right. So this was you were in your 20s when this was occurring.
Yep. I just turned 29.
Gotcha. I'm a little older than that, but let me bring you back. I was shooting a bear archery, and you want to talk about heavy.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That was almost before dirt, Mike.
Let me tell you. Thanks, Dusty. Let me tell you where I bought this thing. I bought it out of a Sears catalog. That's how old this thing was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Junior high. Me and my buddy Bruce, we both bought the exact same archery equipment that same year, 7th grade.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That was heavy. Okay. Continue on. Sorry. Little tangent there.
No, you're fine. So, yeah, the thing I noticed was the lightness of the bow, and I was just in awe. But, I mean, it came set up, it had a rest on it. It had a 3-pin sight on it. It was a little cheapo stabilizer that came with it. It had the wrist strap that came with it. It came with 5 arrows and a quiver, and then, a baseball cap and a couple stickers for your pickup truck,
Sure.
So I ended up getting that whole package right there for $600. So it wasn't, looking after buying the bow and then researching it, still at a year-old model. If you bought it from Bowtech, I think it was going to be about $800 or $850 bear. So, I mean, it was a hell of a deal. So I jumped on it, and basically I pulled it out, looked at it, showed it to everybody in the troop, and then turned around, went to the post office, and mailed it home for $27.
So, that's awesome.
So we were getting ready to come home in December. So when I mailed it, I got home and, I got this new bow all over again. So, just shy of Christmas. So it was exciting again when I got home. So,
oh, heck yeah. How many
so
years? How many years from the point that you shipped it home to the point that you got to reconnect with it was it?
Well, as soon as I think right around March of 2011. I mean, I was at the bow shop, and I said I need a dozen arrows of this. I need to get a release, and I just want to make sure it's set up right for me. It's been so long since I've been out of it. I really don't know anything anymore.
Gotcha.
So pretty much right around March of 2011, I started shooting it and practicing. We got a bow target here in the yard, so and I was ready for the hunting season in 2011. So I learned a lot that first season, being that they have to get close and, just setups and, here we hunt with a rifle, I know where Dusty is, they hunt with shotgun and, definitely with a rifle, the wind doesn't come into play as much as it does with a bow. So that was where I learned a lot of my, mistakes, playing the wind, learning what stand to hunt when the wind was in certain directions. And it came down to actually the last day of bow season in 2011, and I actually harvested my first deer with it. It was 120-pound doe.
Nice.
So I got that first kill out of the way, or the first harvest out of the way, and I've been pretty much hooked from there. I try to do a couple 3D shoots during the summertime and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, work schedules nowadays, nobody ever has time to get out there and shoot as much as they want to.
Right.
I'm just like any other guy. About a week before the season, it's on like Donkey Kong. You're throwing 40 arrows a day out into your target. Trying to get ready for bow season when you should have been doing it all summer.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That happens. That happens a lot.
Oh yeah.
So you're in Afghanistan and you order the bow tag. It comes. You ship it back, and you reacquaint yourself with it in 2011, and you hunt with it for the first time in the fall of 2011. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
You harvest a nice doe,
yep.
And do you go back to Afghanistan after that?
Nope, I haven't been deployed since.
Okay.
We're being a National Guard unit. You have a 5-year cycle, and it's basically you come home from that type of situation, and your first year home is basically what they call a refit year. You get everybody back in, everybody acquainted with their families, all the stuff that you had with you in Afghanistan comes back home, and then you pretty much refit your whole troop. And then as the next year rolls into it, you're basically starting at a small level of training, going back to the basics, starting everything all over again.
Right.
And then the next year you go a little bit further with a little bigger set of training with more people, and then the fourth year of training, you're doing a company-wide training, which is everybody in you're getting evaluated as a company, which is in our case right around 100 soldiers. So, and then basically that fifth year is already you're sitting in something and you're waiting. Is there going to be another deployment or stuff like that? The way things are going down now with military doing a drawdown, we really have nothing on a cycle. So if we don't get picked up to go somewhere within this next year, we'll just start that 5-year cycle all over again, go back to the basics, and work right back to the next 5 years. So
gotcha. Okay.
And I've only got 5 years left before I have to retire. So.
Gotcha. All right. So from 2011, and then you're hunting this whole time. You've found bow hunting. It's your thing.
Yeah.
And you're where are you hunting most of the time? New York?
Yeah, usually I hunt New York. Very, very rarely do I hunt Vermont anymore. They're, from that 10-minute drive from Vermont State to New York State where I live, there is a big difference in the deer herd. Where I live in New York, it's hilly. It's, there's a lot of hardwoods, but there's a lot of corn. And recently, in the last year or so, people just started trying to plant soybean around the area. So, I mean, there's so much more feed over here for the deer to have that there's a significant change in numbers as far as population goes, just in that 10-minute drive,
Interesting. Yeah, it is amazing how you go from one state to the next, how the agriculture, the mindset of the people that live there, and how you can just have that many more deer in your population. It's kind of weird, but it does happen.
Oh yes.
Yep. So when did you start drinking Genesee cream ale?
The family's always drank Genesee. It was one of the traits of the family. I've only drank cream ale once, and I'll never do it again.
I don't blame you, brother. I don't blame you at all. Oh man. All right, so you spent a couple of years. I mean, 2000. You kind of played around in the woods, but when you were a kid, it sounds like. But then you ended up coming back from overseas. You started doing the bow hunting. Between 2011 and 2014, that's not a lot of time to get reacquainted with the woods. So how'd you do it? How'd you get kind of plugged back in?
Well, I mean, hunting has always been a part of my life. My father's had me in the woods ever since I was 8 years old, whether it be with a BB gun or a 20 gauge or a 243. So I mean, it was always a way of life as far as the family went. So I guess you could say it's kind of like riding a bicycle. Once you do it, you never forget it, but you can always learn more. Basically, I knew the area well to where I was hunting here. I mean, I've been hunting this since 2001, and I knew where I was going to be hunting and had ideas and was trying to find new locations and stuff like that. So, but I always come back to that same spot, that is going to, produce something. You always try to find something different bucks in different areas, but usually I just end up coming back to the same spot, and we actually have a club that's right across the street from our house. It's, myself and 6 other guys, and basically been hunting there I got in part of the club basically right after I got back from Afghanistan, because you had to pay money to be in it. It was about $300 a year. Yeah. So that's basically where we go. Trail cameras all the time, monitoring throughout the year, trying to find when antlers are dropping, trying to, monitor deer from the time that the velvet starts. So you can see deer growing through the velvet and then try to pick out which deer you want to shoot for the year and figure out how you're going to hunt it and stuff like that.
Right. So you join a club in New York.
Yep.
And, I mean, clubs are great. I've participated in clubs in North Carolina, and it definitely, the group knowledge, I think, is priceless.
Yes.
You share somewhat, where you think things are, or you could kind of say, all right, all these guys are hunting over here, and you decide that night or that evening, that's the spot where you're going to hunt where everybody else isn't. So there's some strategies, individual strategy, but there's still you get some tips and tricks from all the other guys that are have been hunting there for years and years, and you form your alliances and that kind of stuff. So is that kind of what you're experiencing with your group in New York?
Yeah, I mean, and the group that I have, the set of property that we hunt, that we lease, it's myself, my father's best friend, his son, another friend, and then a father and son that live down the road. I mean, so everybody knows everybody personally. My dad actually started it probably, I'd say 10 or 12 years ago, and their whole idea was they were going to try to start a management to where, they were sick of shooting spikes and stuff like that, so they decided we're not going to shoot spike horns anymore.
Excellent.
And the hardest part about that we've learned over the years is because you're only hunting a 270-acre parcel, and you've got 5 different landowners that border you, that you may let that spike or that 3 or that 4 go, and 15 minutes later hear a shot off in the direction where it walked because it's on another property now, because they're not following the same, guidelines that your group is following. They're there and they're doing their own thing. So, there can be a lot of headache doing that. But after a while, basically what we started this year is, a QDM co-op. So basically the co-op is, it was spearheaded by me and my father and a farmer down the street. Basically what we're trying to do is make it a community-wide thing, not just one set of, guys that hunt one piece of property and, follow one set of rules. We made it a community effort to where we went around and we knocked on doors from March until about August and got landowners on board.
Nice.
Basically preached the QDM process to landowners and, how it was going to benefit them and what was beneficial to them and what they could get out of it and stuff like that. But they were going to have to let their hunters know, hey, this is what I've started to do. There's going to be some rules that come up, and it's going to change your hunting style drastically. And, hopefully within the next 5 years, there's going to be some nice shooter bucks around here. Because basically what we did after everything was said and done, we ended up getting 78 landowners on board with just over 11,000 acres of property.
Wow. That's awesome.
So
let's back that up just a sec.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm dying to hear the story about the buck that you shot, but how do you approach a landowner and ask and explain that to somebody? Pretend I'm the landowner just approaching first time. What do you say to them?
Basically, I introduce myself. I let them know my name, that I live in the area. Hey, my name's Mike. I'm trying to start something here as far as hunting goes, to where, basically down the road, your hunters are going to have a more enjoyable experience hunting and harvest bigger deer, but at the same time, manage the herd. Because as of right now, as a rough guess, our doe to buck ratio is about 8-to-1 in the area. So basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to manage the herd, educate the hunter, and let everybody know that, your hunts can be more enjoyable. It's going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take everybody coming together as a team. But if 5 years down the road, you're not going to be looking at spikes every year. You're going to be looking at, nice 6s, nice 8s, and stuff like that, and possibly bigger deer that you can harvest. At the same time, if you're a farmer, I'm going to tell you one thing that's going to help for you. It's going to reduce crop damage, and it's going to create forest regeneration. And then if you don't want hunting on your property, you can still join it. Your area of property just becomes a deer sanctuary, and it's a spot where the deer can be safe because there's no hunting pressure there.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a lot of different things. It's a lot of education. I've learned so much since March just studying this program and how it works, because, the QDMA is actually a national organization. I'm just a co-op within the national organization. So, but
gotcha.
It's just, we have a buck of, our doe objective is only adult does will be harvested. And I had to write a 5-year plan to the state of New York saying, hey, this is my plan. This is how many acres of cropland I have. This is how many acres of woodland I have. This is pasture land, and this is brush. I'm basically going to apply for an 11,000 acre span of, I wanted 200 doe permits extra for the 11,000 acres to help start weeding out the does. And, so I applied for 275, hoping to get 200, and New York State actually runs off of one nuisance permit per 50 acres, so we end up getting 212 tags.
All right, so let's talk about the doe harvest here. What is the importance, according to QDMA and what you've learned, what's the importance of harvesting that number of doe and harvesting the doe, period?
From what I've learned, the importance of it is the fact that if you have such a higher ratio of does compared to your bucks, a lot of it is breeding. It has to do with a lot of breeding because basically what happens is you don't have enough bucks to make all the does happy, I guess. And a lot of your does are actually going into their second or third estrus cycle before they're getting bred. And that's why a lot of the time around here you're seeing spotted fawns in late August and early September because those does aren't getting bred until, late December, early January timeframe.
Gotcha.
Because there's not enough bucks to actually keep producing those does. So,
gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
So at the same time, we do have a buck objective, and the buck objective is not to harvest any deer that is a year and a half old. So, you can have a spike horn be a year and a half, and you can have a 7-pointer be a year and a half. It's all a matter of body characteristics and being a skillful enough hunter to actually look at the body characteristics of a deer and say, hey, that's only a year and a half old deer. I know it's a 7-pointer, but it's not 2.5 years old. But also at the same time, so basically what our buck objective is, it has to be at least a 2.5-year-old deer. It has to have a minimum of a 15-inch outside spread and carry a minimum of 6 points.
Is that an indicator of age when you're talking about the bucks in your area, the width of the antler spread?
Basically, when you're doing when you age deer on the hoof, you're not actually looking at their antler spread size. Because like I said, a 7-pointer that's a year and a half old, and more than likely their rack is going to be in between their ears. They're going to have a hindquarter that's bigger than the front shoulders. Their tarsal staining isn't going to be as much, because they're basically an 8-year-old kid still, trying to hit the toilet. Their neck is going to be skinny like a doe's and stuff like that. There's a lot of different things to look at.
All right. I'm 43. I'm still trying to hit the toilet.
He ain't joking, Mike.
All right. I think we're all still trying to hit the toilet, guys. Let's be real. I get complaints all the time. Sorry.
But basically, it's knowing what to look for. And when we made those rules, I have a board of guys. There's me and another 4 other guys that we sit on a board, and we sat down one night for 3 hours and came up with the rules that we wanted. Basically, when we got the doe tags for the state, we basically broke it down to any landowner that joined on and was going to get a tag, just as a, hey, thank you for letting us try to make this work. So they would get a doe tag. But then the rest of them we split out between, how big acreage properties were. Bigger acreage properties got more doe tags because they harbor more does. Your smaller acreage properties might have got, anywhere between 1 to 3 tags, where your 500 plus acres of property got about 9 tags. And we recommended that basically try to shoot the doe early and often, because you get towards the tail end of rifle season, some of those does may already be bred. By the time you get the muzzleloader season, if they're not bred, you're looking at possibly harvesting a fawn that was 40 or 50 pounds at the beginning of the season is now 80 or 90 pounds, and they look bigger. But you end up going to harvest a button buck, which actually is kind of counterproductive for what we're trying to do.
Right, definitely. It is hard to tell a button buck from a doe though at 100 yards.
Yes. And that is one of those things where, the one thing I have learned this year, because, as of last year, we hadn't done this, and it was just by our club rules over across the street from where I live, it was no spikes. But since that program started, people started shooting bigger deer, so people were passing up 4s, 5s, and stuff like that. It had to be a better deer. But from what I learned this year is this program being QDM actually makes you slow down. Look at the animal that you're going to try to harvest and say, is this a mature doe? What are the characteristics of this animal that make me know that it's a mature doe? Has it got a long face? Does it have a long tail? Is it higher off the ground than that deer is? Does that deer have a short face? Does it have a short tail? Real spindly neck? Is it a fawn? And there was even some times where you have bucks in the scope where you're looking at it going, is that whip big enough? Because roughly 15 inches is about tip to tip on the ears. Is it outside the ears? Is it inside the ears? Passed up on an 8-pointer this year that it was about 12 inches of an outside spread. But I can say I'm happy doing that, because if he ends up making it through the rest of this hunting season and making it through the winter, what's he going to look like next year?
Right.
One of those things. So basically, go ahead.
Well, chime in here, Mike. This is a program that you took upon yourself through the QDMA. Is that correct?
Yes. Basically what happened is my dad and the farmer down the road got talking about it. And it was something that they wanted to do, and they knew there was another, QDM co-op within the area. And the guy who was actually the head of that QDM co-op was also a board member for the Upper Hudson River Valley QDMA branch, which they cover 4 different counties in New York State, Washington County, Saratoga County, Rensselaer County, and Warren County. So they get all their, big information from the QDMA, the national organization, and basically what they do is if we're going to want to try this, they come to a location of your liking, you sit down with landowners and say, hey, this is what the QDMA is all about. Do you guys want to start it up? Myself, my dad, and the farmer down the road agreed that it was something we would want to try. And with my dad being as busy as having a butcher shop here out of the house, he said, hey, do you want to be the president? Do you want to spearhead this? Do you want to go? And I love deer hunting so much that I was like, yeah, I'll do this. I didn't realize what I was getting myself into, but it's been a learning curve. Going out and talking to 7 to 8 different landowners, basically coming home from work, eating dinner, leaving till, 8, 9 o'clock at night after you're talking to landowners, and
Sure.
everybody's got a story, when you go talk to them,
Do you end up setting up the appointment ahead of time with the landowner, or do you actually just knock on doors? How does that work?
Basically the way we did it is we just, we actually called the Rensselaer County, I guess, tax department, and we ended up getting a tax map for the area, and we found out where different landowners lived. And what we did is we used that map, and we just drove around and we'd knock on doors. It wasn't a scheduled appointment or anything like that. We'd rather work face-to-face than call somebody because, you talk on the phone to somebody, they're probably going to listen to half what you're saying,
right.
Just like a telemarketer would, So we figured, it's best just to go face-to-face, look them in the eye, shake their hand, let them know who you were, and do it that way.
You tell them that you're from the QDMA at that point?
No, basically, from at that point, it was, hey, I live down the road about 5 miles, and this is what I'm looking to, start. We're not a QDM yet, but this is what I want to start. And you don't become a QDM until you have at least 1,000 contiguous acres of touching properties. And then once you have that, you can actually apply to the state to make the QDM work.
Gotcha.
The state of New York recognizes it, which I think is great, but they also need to recognize the fact that they need to change their antler restrictions. So the state loves the fact that we're doing it and changing antler restrictions within a group, but if the state would actually catch on and say, hey, for the last 110 years, we've had an antler restriction of 1 point at 3 inches, and these QDM guys are going around, maybe we should, kind of take a little hint out of their book.
Right. So do the land, does it have to be, do roads intersecting in them separate that, or how does that work?
We basically made a border, like just 4 different main roads that we would cut it off because we actually have a QDM co-op to our west about, 10 miles from here, and we didn't want to get too far into their area.
Okay.
But we wanted to get as close to another co-op that was north of us without, getting too far into them. So we basically had set up boundaries, and there's really, it's basically just like hunting posted land, there are poster signs everywhere, and just because I own a QDM property doesn't mean that I automatically have the right to go hunt your property because you're a QDM. The landowner is in control. They say who hunts on their property and when they can hunt on their property and what actually wants to be done on their property. So it's all landowner driven. We just give them the opportunity to join it, but they are the ones that set we set guidelines, but they're also going to set the rules. Like say if the property ended up getting 7 doe tags, but the farmer only wanted 5 harvested off the property, that's up to him.
Gotcha. So in a sense, it becomes a big piece of posted property. Landowners still have control. Even if you say you're part of the QDM project, doesn't mean you're going to get to hunt there, although I'm sure it has some weight.
Yes, I mean it does have some weight. Basically, what we did too is we made these what we call dashboard tags, and it was basically just bright orange paper. I put our logo on it. I wrote, who's a carrier QDM Co-op 2014, and I'd let the landowners know, hey, if you have hunters that are hunting your property, make sure put these on their dashboards. That way, you can tell that person actually has permission to be hunting that property. And, if you drive by it and say, I don't recognize that vehicle, but they have that tag there, you're like, all right. It gives you a sense of security, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And at the same time, I've got in touch with the local, environmental control, and they know the areas that are QDM properties and whatnot. They kind of, patrol it to a degree, and I talked to one of the environmental officers, and he said, basically, if there's a vehicle parked on the side of the road, on a QDM property and they don't have that dash tag, I will wait there until they come out and start asking questions like, why are you here? Did you forget to put your dash tag on? Do you even have permission to hunt here at all? You know?
Sure, that makes sense.
So
it
creates a community watch.
Does it, I mean, if you're a non-QDMA, that's got to be real attractive to say, hey, these guys are trying to grow big bucks in there and I'm just going to sneak in there.
Yeah, that is one of the downfalls of the program because, you know, it's such a big QDM area that, you know, it's a community. Word gets around, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, there was actually one incident of somebody actually poached a nice buck off one of the properties this year. And they ended up getting caught. You know, it was right towards dusk. And basically they pulled up and they harvested the deer. They left it there and they were waiting to come back. But I mean, luckily one of our environmental officers was right in the area, right around the area, heard a shot and, you know, just kind of went and investigated and found the deer and waited for the guys to come back. So, I mean, you're going to find that draw. I mean, even the people that aren't QDM, that border a QDM property, you know, you can't keep a buck contained to one area, you know. They might reap the benefits of it down the road, you know.
Right. Oh, right. Yeah, that makes sense. So basically, it's the QDMA idea. It's getting your friends and neighbors and landowners to jump on board. There is a bit of enforcement that is behind it, and then just hope for the best is basically what.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Gotcha.
And this is the first year, so it's, you know, it's trial by area. You know, I've learned some few things along the way. Hey, this is what I'm going to do next year. You know, some of the landowners that have joined, you know, they don't push as, you know, as hard as some of the other landowners do. Like, hey, you're going to follow these rules. You're hunting on behalf of my name because if you do something wrong, you're making me look bad. You know. Or some of them don't really enforce it at all, you know, because we actually have part of it is herd monitoring. You know, you do you basically monitor the herd because you're basically doing a harvest data. So any deer that is either harvested, found dead, or, you know, taken on a QDM property is brought to a check station. It gets weighed. You know, if it's a doe, does it have milk in its system still? You know, we're pulling jaw bones so we can try to get an idea of what the ages of the deer are that we're harvesting. You know, if it's a buck, you know, what's the outside spread? What's the inside spread? How many points did it sport? You know, what's the beam length? So we're basically studying the deer even after the harvest. And at the end of the year, the jaw bones are going to go to a biologist named Matt Ross who works for the QDMA. And he's going to try to go through the jaw bones and try to age each jaw bone that we have and kind of give us a rough estimate of the average age of the deer that we're harvesting off of our properties. That's
awesome. Mm-hmm. I got to say, I'm mesmerized by the coordination here. And Dusty, chime in here if you want, but I don't know if you realize we just spent about 40 minutes talking about QDMA.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's a great program with what I'm hearing as far as, you know, upping the value of your bucks.
Yeah.
It's you know, not shooting the spikes or the 4 points or the 6 points if they're small, or even some of the 8 and 10 points, or, you know, just small basket racks, and letting them get to a mature age before you harvest them. That's going to make a healthier herd. It's going to, you know, your program sounds like it's reducing the does as far as, you shooting mature does, and, you know, obviously the mature does are having, you know, twins, some triplets, so that'll reduce the herd a little bit. It ought to make the environment better as far as fertility of the land, be able to stabilize the herd in the area. And man, it sounds real awesome what you got going there. It sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so that's kind of the 30,000 foot view of what's going on in the area you live in. I want to get into like the 30-yard view, if you catch my drift here.
Oh yeah, I'm catching your drift.
Okay, Dusty, let's start breaking down Mike's pack and all the gear that he brings into the field with him. What does he do? How does he do it? You know the drill. Mike, I want Dusty to break it down with you.
Okay.
Absolutely. Mike, we've lucked into finding your picture on Facebook, and that buck gross score 203, if I'm correct.
Yes, Buckmaster's gross scored at 203 and 6/8. Yep.
Buckmaster's gross score 203 inches and 6/8. Wow, awesome buck. Let's get into a little bit. This buck was out of Ohio, correct?
That is correct.
What county?
Sandusky County, out of the town of Bradner.
So northern Ohio.
Northern Ohio, about 20 minutes from Bowling Green.
20 minutes from Bowling Green, Ohio. the home of the Mecca giant bucks is Ohio. It's getting better every year. A lot of states are getting better every year, but Ohio, it's been up there for a good while now. Let's get into.
Well, no GPS coordinates, Dusty. You're not going to ask that this time.
Shh.
Oh, you're setting them up.
Come on, stop.
I see. You're trying to like get them to feel comfortable with you, and then I'll just ease them in. I'll use my buddy. I get it. All right, whatever.
What are you doing, man?
Jason, it's coming, Mike. I'm telling you, it's coming. Just be ready for it.
It's terrible that you red flagged me already.
If you want to throw a few digits off, hey, I get it.
Yeah, but I'm going at a different approach, and like you just busted my chops on it.
Got to ease them in, Dusty. Ease them in. You'll get it.
Yeah, but
all right, sorry.
You can't just red flag me like that, Jay. Come on now. All right, Michael. Back to the hunt. BSJ. But by the way, you got GPS coordinates for that stand by chance?
I lost the memory battery. I don't know where it went.
It always something like that.
It is.
Everybody always loses the coordinates. I don't know why that is.
So I come across your buck on Facebook, and man, I was really impressed. It's a gnarly looking buck, but here at the Big Buck Registry, we like to get into the details of what it took to harvest a 203-inch buck. That's a buck of a lifetime for a lot of lifetimes. Let's get into, let's say, your hunting setup. As far as what kind of camouflage are you wearing?
I wear Realtree Extra. Just basically your run-of-the-mill, buy it at Walmart because it's cheap, but it still does the job.
Right, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. It ain't about how much you spend. It's how good it camouflages you in the woods.
Yep.
So you're using Realtree camouflage, and do you use any kind of hunting spray as far as cover spray, scent spray?
Usually I use Scentaway Earth Scent Spray.
Scentaway Earth Scent Spray. Gotcha. Is that like the 99.9%?
It's supposed to be. It hasn't worked 99% of the time, I'll tell you that.
Gotcha. So we're going to Ohio on this hunt. How did this all come about that you was headed to Ohio for a whitetail hunt?
Actually, not this year, but last year, I was actually offered to go to a hunt out in southeastern Ohio over in Licking County. A couple guys had a guy that had backed out of the hunt, and they asked me if I wanted to go, but it was towards the end of September, and they were going the first week of November, and there was no way I could save that much cash to make it happen. So, being that I work in veteran outreach over, in Vermont State, I had a client who came in who I actually went to Afghanistan with, and I told him about it and stuff like that, and he, basically told me the story, after we got back from Afghanistan. He had a coon dog that had died, and he knows the bloodlines of coon dogs really well, and he actually found this family out in Ohio that bred coon dogs. And so basically, when he went out there and bought this coon dog, they basically invited him out whenever he wanted to come to hunt coon and stuff like that with them. And so he basically said right then and there, let me call Art Meyer, the landowner, and, let me see if it's something that I can bring you out with us. You can deer hunt, I'll coon hunt, everybody will be happy. You'll get to meet some people, stuff like that. So that happened, went out there last year, got to meet the Meyer family. And then, my deer hunt was unsuccessful last year. Saw a lot of bucks. Nothing came in close enough. I saw one incredible deer about 70 yards in front of me, but, I knew 100% that I wasn't going to harvest that deer, even if I held a pin 50 yard pin high, so I just didn't even pull back. I just watched it walk by and had the time of my life, because at that point in my life, it was the biggest deer I'd ever seen. So last year's hunt was unsuccessful.
So
my dad back out there again in January for the muzzleloader hunt, and it was nasty. I mean, we hunted 2 days, and then we got that big snowstorm where it was like 45 below with the wind chill and just Class 3 road conditions, and couldn't do anything.
Right. So the previous year you had been out to Ohio and kind of scouted this area out.
Yeah. Mr. Meyer, basically what he did is he'd let a couple landowners in the area know, hey, I got this kid coming out from New York. He's going to be deer hunting. Hey, can he hunt this property? Can he hunt that property? He hooked me up with another guy that was 15 miles away over in Seneca County, and he was like, hey, can he hunt your property? So they gave me a couple different areas to hunt, but me not knowing the areas because I didn't go out there until it was time to hunt, so I had no scouting whatsoever. So basically,
so you was kind of going in blindfolded on this.
Yeah. So
gotcha. Yeah, that makes it more interesting.
Scouting at the same time,
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So let's get into. You went out there in 2011. Is that correct?
No, it was 2013 last year when I went.
All right, 2013. You went out and hunted that year. and seen a great buck. Tell us a little bit about the landscape that you're hunting there in Ohio.
Right there where I hunt is a lot of soybean cornfields and just small blocks of wood and stuff like that. It's basically really flat. There's not a lot of cover, but there's probably say 80% open space between the cornfields and the soybean, and probably 20% hardwoods. So it's really flat and very open. Right.
So you're kind of hunting in a deer mecca. It sounds like.
Oh yeah, a lot of fence line hunting. I noticed last year with the buck that I saw, he was actually a buck that I'd been hunting for a few days, and where I hunted, he was actually going down the fence row and coming up a ditch line, or going down the ditch line and coming up a fence row. And it just seemed like every day I changed position, he would change his location of travel. So it was just cat and mouse between me and that buck.
Awesome. So what day did you harvest this buck on?
November 15th, 2014.
November 15th. Is there any kind of food plots there?
No, it's just basically the farm property that was there. When I got there was still a lot of standing corn. I showed up on the 7th of November. We stayed to the 17th, and right around the 13th, they started shelling corn pretty heavy. And actually, one of the landowners had told me the day he started shelling corn, he said, "I'll give you 20 minutes to get in your stand, and I'll start shelling that field to the right of your stand, and then maybe you'll have something jump out in front of you." To no avail. Sure enough, they jumped out, but they went completely the opposite direction. So just didn't end up working out that day. And 2 days later is when I harvested it, pretty much right by the same field that he had just chopped 2 days before.
Nice. What kind of tree stand setup are you using?
I didn't have really any tree stands when I got out there, so I went over to Bowling Green one day to a store called Dunham's, and I bought 2 big game tree stands, just regular ladder stands, nothing spectacular. And it was going to get one, but I ended up buying 2 because they were on sale for $60 a piece. So
nice, awesome. So we're going to bump up to November the 7th, 2000. That's the official date, correct, or is that the 14th?
It was the 15th.
It was the 15th. Sorry, my bad. I wrote down the wrong number there. So we're going to bump up to November the 15th, 2014. What time did you wake up that morning?
6:30.
6:30? It's daylight. No, I'm kidding you. So November the 15th, 6:30, you wake up. So tell us how you start out to get ready to head for the woods.
Alarm went off at 5:30. I turned it off, and because we were out in the shed the night before telling hunting stories and watching college football, so ended up staying up a little bit later than I wanted to. So when 5:30 went off, it was, nope, I'm not getting up. So 6:30, I wake up. I look at my phone, and there's a voicemail. So I checked the voicemail real quick. It came in at about 20 minutes to 6. It was a gentleman that I had went out there with from Vermont State. He was actually heading to Indiana that day, and he'd left at 5:30. So at 20 minutes to 6, he calls me and says, "Mike, I just saw the biggest buck of my life cross the road in front of me. He's headed in the direction of where your stand is. I don't know if he'll make it there, but you should probably get out of it."
Yeah, that's always a good message.
Oh, yes. So from there, I go over and look at my Weather Channel app. What's the temperature? Well, it's 20 degrees out, but it feels like 9 degrees. So, and all I have is just regular bow hunting clothes, and I am not prepared to sit out in a stand and freeze my butt off. Art Meyer, the guy who owns the place that we were staying at, he got up and he kind of said, "Oh, I understand Tom has the truck, so I'll give you a ride down to your stand." So I got roosted up and ready to go, and basically where my stand is, you can see Mr. Meyer's house. It's not very far. It's maybe a half mile down the road, but it sits on a fence row between a soybean field and a cornfield. And the cornfield was just shelled 2 days prior. So there's a fence row that splits the 2 fields. And so as we're pulling up, and he's going to drop me off to go down that soybean side of the fence row, at 7:15, there's this buck standing in the field 70 yards from my stand.
At this point, it's already daylight.
And at this point, it's already daylight. And at this point right now, I am kicking myself in the behind because I should have got up at 5:30 when I had set my alarm. So Mr. Meyer ended up driving down to the next intersection. He said, "Get the rest of your gear on." He said, "Drop the tailgate." He said, "We're going to do a dump and run." So basically what we did is we went down to the next intersection. I got the rest of my gear on.
A dump and run, is that like a chew and screw?
Pretty much, yeah. We're dropping the tailgate. He's gonna drive by real slow, and I'm gonna hop off, and he's gonna keep moving to keep the deer occupied on movement instead of me. So,
Nice.
So we turn around.
Hold on. Well, I gotta stop you right there, Mike. That's a new technique that we haven't heard on the Big Buck Registry.
This is a new one. I have to say, I like this. I like discovering new techniques to add to our repertoire.
This whole story is a military operation. I mean, I had an intel report at 20 minutes to 6. I got a guy who understands what's going on, so he's going to keep the enemy occupied while I'm going in.
now, Mike, you must have studied the Trojan horse theory.
Yes.
When you were going through all your military training.
Oh, yes.
Is that related to this?
It could be. It could be.
So say it again. You got dump and run or bump and run?
A dump and run, which is basically I'm dumping off the back of the tailgate, and I'm going to walk to the soybean field to the left of them, and Mr. Meyer's going to keep moving forward and keep the truck moving, so they focus on the moving truck instead of the guy that just hopped off the back of the truck.
I got you. So we call it a dump and run.
Dump and run.
Nice. I'm liking that. That's something that I'm gonna have to try that technique out. Come on, guys, we're doing a dump and run.
So when you say DNR, we're not talking about Department of Natural Resources anymore.
No, it's a dump and run. That's what DNR stands for.
I like that. Yeah, that's awesome. Dump and run. So, man, I'm in this story. So you got to keep going. You get dump and run after you get all your gear on.
Little DNR. All right. Where are we going?
DNR.
Next?
Let's go.
So I hop off the back of the tailgate. Mr. Meyer keeps moving down the road, and sure enough, I get into the soybean field. I don't make it 20 yards in, and who's watching me? Mr. Buck Nasty. He's just sitting there like, who is this guy and what's he trying to do?
Mr. Buck Nasty.
So what's he do? He takes off running. He crosses the ditch and goes out into the next cornfield, and Mr. Meyer just starts grabbing gears. He gets down to the next intersection, takes a left, and cuts the deer off at the pass and holds them in the cornfield so I can get into my stand.
That's nice.
Yeah. So I'm sitting in my stand. I finally get set up in my stand, and the deer is still out there. He's got a hot doe with him, and he's got 2 other bucks. Mr. Meyer has gone from the equation whatsoever because basically the deer is standing there. And once they stood there, the other bucks tried to creep in on the doe. So the buck that I harvested is doing more work trying to keep these other bucks at bay and make sure that she's comfortable laying in the corn. So this goes on for over an hour. I get a text message in my stand from my father because actually back home in New York State, it was the first day of rifle season. And he asked me how the hunt was going, and I took a picture of him about 300 yards out, and I said, this is what I'm dealing with right now. And we had gotten snow back here at home, and he had sent me a picture of 2 doe that he had just harvested with his QDM tags and said, well, the truck's warm, I got to go. Stick with it. Good luck. So I watched this go on I'm watching this deer for over an hour, run off other bucks.
Are they just standing there, or the same general vicinity, running off other bucks? Is that what he's doing at this point?
Yeah, I mean, he's maybe running in a 50-yard loop, just trying to keep them at bay.
Right, he's got the doe's bedded up on him.
Yep, and finally the other bucks gave up. They bedded down right there near him, and he bedded down next to the doe. So about an hour later, I see Mr. Meyer drive by again. He's headed down to the local store to get a can of chew. And I'm still sitting here watching these bucks. You
got to have a can of chew after a DNR.
Oh, yeah. And then Mr. Meyer comes back through about 15 minutes later. There's 2 trucks parked on the side of the road in the general vicinity of where this deer is. Well, Mr. Meyer stops and talks to the gentleman, and they said, there's a big buck out there. And he said, I know. He says, I don't mind if you hunt it. He said, there's nothing that says it's somebody else's deer. He goes, but I just want to let you know there's a kid down there in that fence line somewhere. So, I mean, just be aware that if you go in and try to, get this deer, that there's somebody else down there too. And so the guys had made their plan, and it was a father and a son. The son went down on the fence road down in the end of where I was sitting about 200 yards away, and the father came in off the road, and he had a crossbow in his hand. So the moment they start coming in off the road, all 4 of these deer get up, and they start running right towards me. So the blood's starting to pump. It's going down like crazy. And first buck that runs by is a small 4. He's about 70 yards to my right, runs through the fence row and just keeps going. Another buck comes out in front of me with about 50 yards, cuts into the woods to my left, and he's, I want to say, busted off 8, or what you call a dink. He's busted off on one side.
Dink is back.
Yeah.
So, and then the doe had come down, and she hopped right into the ditch line about 100 yards to the right of my stand. And as soon as she got there, she bedded right down. and he stood there right over the top of her and watched her. He pretty much never got down into the ditch line. He just hovered over her, and he was watching the guy coming off the road. So I got a lot of thoughts going through my head right now. One, I got up late. This deer's already standing in this field when I get here. He runs off, and now he comes back, and I'm going to sit here and watch this guy harvest his deer in front of me.
Oh, no.
I'm sick to my stomach right now. I have no clue how this is.
I'm sick to my stomach right now, and it's like it's already happened.
Oh, man.
It's like going into the Titanic movie and knowing the ship went down.
Oh, yeah. So he gets, I mean, the guy had everything in his favor. The wind was, in his favor. He's got his crossbow pretty much right up in front of his face to kind of break up his silhouette a little bit. And he gets within about 50 yards of this buck. And finally it just busts off and cuts out in front of me at about 100 yards. And then he whips right back around and heads right over to the doe. And he's sitting there watching her, watching him, watching the doe, watching the hunter. So this guy's creeping up a little closer. And you got to be kidding me. This is. I'm going to watch this go down, and I'm going to puke. So
you hear me gagging. I'm about to puke just thinking this is about to go down on you.
Yeah.
Dang. So
he gets within another 10 yards. The only thing that was against the gentleman was the fact that he had an older style crossbow with a peep sight and one pin, and it was only good to 30 yards.
Oh man! So at this point in time, this other hunter is actually coming towards this big buck.
Oh yeah, he's within 40 yards of it now.
Oh wow!
Within 70 yards of it.
Wow.
So we're really only 100 between the buck, the hunter, and myself. We're only 110 yards.
Does he have any clue that you're right there?
He knows I'm on that fence line somewhere, but he doesn't know exactly where I am.
Gotcha.
So I mean, and I'm camouflaged from head to toe. So he got within that next 10 yards, which put him 40 yards from it, and the buck finally just busted off, blew, snorted, left, and was out of town, ran 100 yards in front of me, and then cut over into the woods to my left. And so at this point, this gentleman starts walking the rest of the way down the ditch line and gets about 50 yards from me, and I leaned over and I spit just so he could see movement. He sees that I'm there. He kind of gives me a nod and a wave like, hey, sorry, I'm not going to bust you up. Turns around, starts heading back. So the gentleman starts walking back, and he made it maybe another 30 yards walking away from me, and the buck comes right back out in the same path that he went in, and he stopped dead at 100 yards in front of me. So now the guy, the hunter, is actually between the doe and the buck, and the buck is confused because now he doesn't know what his next step is going to be. So the hunter just stops there, and he's kind of looking at it. He knows he's kind of, screwed up because he's caught. He can't really do anything at this point. And so the buck's sitting there. He's stomping. He's blowing. He's doing everything he can. Finally, he just turns on a beeline and heads right towards me. And I stand right up, and I have a Trophy Ridge single-pin pendulum sight, and it was set at 30 yards. And I don't know where this buck is actually going to come through. I don't know if he's actually going to bust off early or what. So he gets within 50 yards of me, and he cuts at an angle to my left. And as soon as he cut in at an angle, I pulled right back, and I'm standing up, pulled right back, holding. And I had one opening that he can go through. And as he's coming to this opening, I mouth bleed. He doesn't slow down a bit. He's not full out running. He's trotting. So I mouth bleed, and he doesn't stop. He doesn't slow down. I mouth bleed again. He doesn't slow down. He doesn't stop.
Okay, make the sound. Make the sound that you did trying to stop this buck. Gotcha.
So I did that twice, and then the third time, I might as well just said, "Hey, you stop," or something, because that third mouth bleed, I mean, it was, you could have heard it over in Bowling Green. That's how loud it was.
So you had to get aggressive to get him stopped.
Mm-hmm. So on that aggressive mouth bleed, he kind of started to look and slow down, kind of where it was coming from, but he wasn't going to stop moving, and he was getting ready to go out of my opening. So I released the arrow, and he actually was still moving forward and ducked the string at the same time. And when he did, it actually got back, and when he ducked, it hit him in the spine, and it rolled him right over.
No kidding.
So.
Oh, that was the ending that I'd never seen coming.
No, me either. I mean, and I did.
That's why it's a great story, man.
Yeah. So you spine shot this buck and drops him straight down.
Dropped him straight down. It was right in front of the hindquarters, so I mean, he still had use of his front legs.
Right.
And I knocked another arrow, and he's crawling to the woodline. He's on his front legs crawling to the woodline. And I'm not going to sit here and watch this animal suffer, so I'm coming down the stand like a madman.
Right.
And I ran right over to him. I met him at the woodline. I put another arrow in his chest, and I actually turned around and walked away because I knew that he was going to die right then and there, but I wanted to give him time, and I didn't want to get right up in his face. And so I just kind of turned around, and I walked over to the ditch line, and so many thoughts were running through my head, and about halfway to the ditch line, I just get on my knees, I put my hands up in the air, and I just gave the biggest Indian war cry that you could ever hear in your life.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So the gentleman who has actually come in and actually watched this whole thing go down, and he's walking towards me. And he gives me this big high five. He's got a big grin on his face, and he's like, good job, you know. And his son's actually coming up the wood line now, and they stopped by and actually, you know, came and looked at the deer. And that's when I noticed all the junk on his head. I didn't realize, you know, at the time that he had that drop tine coming off the right-hand side of the base. I didn't know that he had that 90-degree, you know, horn that come off the G2 there. And then I didn't realize until actually after I got him out of the woods that left main beam was actually split into two beams.
Right, so, yeah. I mean, this thing's
a little more characteristic right there.
It's probably one of the gnarliest wrecks I've seen in a couple of years.
Oh, yeah. And I remember when those guys got there, the guy who came in, he looks at the deer, he looks at me and goes, what did you do? So,
what did you do?
Wow, yeah.
First
That's
thing
awesome,
I do is
though.
I call my dad, because this is the man that introduced me to hunting when I was 8 years old. You know, he went back through the hunter safety course, even though he'd already taken it, and he went back through it with me. You know, so I just talked to him, you know, an hour and a half prior, and, you know, I tried to call my phone. My phone wouldn't call out. My phone wouldn't call out. This gentleman gives me his phone, and I'm like, I call my dad, and he answers the phone, and he's like, what's going on? I'm like, I got it. And he's like, you got what? I was like, I got that buck. He goes, no, you didn't. I said, yes, I did. You know, it took about a minute of coaxing to actually make me believe, or make him believe that I actually harvested this deer. And so the gentleman that was with me, he said, oh, yeah, it's laid right here in front of us, you know. And we got down and we started looking at the deer more. And I counted 16 points, but Buckmasters told me there was only 15 because one of the points that was coming off the side only measured 7/8, so it wasn't a measurable point because it wasn't an inch.
Right.
But they gave me a ride back to, I tagged the deer, called it into the DNR. I actually got a ride back from them back to Mr. Meyer's house, and I'm looking to get Mr. Meyer's help now.
So did you get a DNR when they went by?
No. They were nice. They actually slowed down and let me out, you know,
right.
with a stopped vehicle.
How did you extract this mega buck out of the field?
Well, when I went back to Mr. Meyer's house, I was going back to get him, and basically, what I did is I went there, and his four-wheelers were there, his truck was there, but he was nowhere to be found. So I actually quickly grabbed one of Mr. Meyer's four-wheelers, and I went back to do the gutting process. So here I am now by myself trying to get this deer on the back of this two-wheel drive four-wheeler. So I'm standing on the back racks.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm lifting up by his antlers, and I get him about 3/4 of the way up, and he pulls back, and I fall off the back of the four-wheeler. So I eventually get him on. His back feet are hanging on the ground, so I got those over my lap. I got the front legs over my lap, and I'm sitting on the chest of this deer, one hand in his four-wheeler all the way back to Mr. Meyer's house, about a half a mile away.
Oh, that's great.
Fantastic.
Oh, that's fabulous. So what did Mr. Meyer say about this awesome buck?
Well, when I got back to Mr. Meyer's house, he was actually in the combine shelling his cornfield. And instead of just pulling up and walking over, I pulled up with the four-wheeler, and he was actually getting ready to come around the turn row there. And he starts coming down, and I lift up the head, and all of a sudden I hear the combine just start powering down. So he's actually got a buddy in the combine with him. They both come over, and the first thing Mr. Meyer says is, you didn't hit him in a good spot.
Of course.
So basically, they ceased all horn harvesting operations for about an hour or so, and we actually went down to another farm and grabbed a scale. Hung the deer up, and it dressed out at 210 pounds.
Wow.
And then basically what I did, kind of the same thing I do with the QDM, I basically tell the guys, if you're going to put pictures on our Facebook page, clean the deer up, make it look presentable. So we hosed down the deer and got all the blood off that we could, stuck the tongue back in its mouth, and that's where we took the pictures. It was right there at the farm. So
that's awesome, man.
Oh yeah. And then it was beer 30 the rest of the evening.
beer 30.
Beer 30 is right.
What a
little Genesee cream ale.
No, we were actually drinking Busch Light.
Thank God. Thank God.
What a great story that you totally caught me off guard with a spinal shot.
Oh yeah. I caught myself off guard with a spinal shot.
that just like,
It's real. That's real hunting, Dusty.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
This isn't TV. This is radio. We can talk about how it's really done.
Absolutely. It's just one of them things where it just seemed like there was such going on. There's so much going on with the story. I was waiting for a shot, then another guy shot, then you ran up and shot. It was just one of them things where the spinal shot and he went straight down. It just blew my mind. It was so awesome, though.
Yeah. I mean, I talked to Mr. Ed Waite, he's from Ohio there, and I was telling him the story there the other night.
That is the man. Ed Waite is the man.
He is the man.
I basically told him, he asked me about the story. He said, "Is this good enough to publish if I deem to publish it?" I said, Mr. Waite, I said, nothing against you. I said, but you don't deem it good enough to publish in your magazine or anything like that. I said, it's always going to mean something to me. It's always going to be my story, and it doesn't matter if it's not good for the public eye to read or listen to. It's awesome. It's going to always be an awesome story to me, I'm going to carry that with me for the rest of my life, And so he listened to the story. He said, no, that's pretty good. So, I mean, I don't know if it's, if it'll get published or not. I sent some pictures to Mr. Waite and stuff like that. But this, if I had to say, like the way I told him was, it's a story where everything started off wrong and ended up right.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great story, really. It's one of the ones that just, it hooks you into it because this is like almost too good to be true.
Yeah.
But at the end, it all paid off.
And where the story starts back in Afghanistan in 2010, that was the prelogue to the book, and then, this is just a chapter out of that bow's, life.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's just, that bow has history to me now, and I actually almost thought at the beginning of this year, maybe I'll get a new bow, but there's nothing wrong with that bow.
Right.
It's just, there's a lot of history there to me. It's just everything kind of played in, because if I've never bought that bow in 2010 and got back into bow hunting, this story, and I would not be talking to you right now. It would never happen.
Right.
Right. I agree to that, and thank God for Mr. Myers there in Ohio letting you hunt. It all was a big planned out mecca of a great buck.
Oh yeah.
You tell a great story, Mike, I have to say.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I'm a little long-winded. I love
talking. Oh, no.
We like long-winded on this show.
Yeah, it was a great story.
Long-winded is preferred. Oh, that's awesome. Man, that's such a great story. Well, thanks, man. We deeply appreciate you spending the time.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell it,
Absolutely.
I never thought, this buck continually surprises me. Every time, something new happens with it, when, we got it green scored, it was by a guy who used to guide about 5 years ago, and he was trying to remember the best of his ability what he could at green scored to 198. I bring it to Buckmasters, and it scores 203,
Wow.
Pretty much a week after I get home, I get a text from Dusty saying, call me now. Like, I need to talk to you,
Yeah, I recognize something. That's the great thing about Facebook is that, it offers so much opportunity for us to reach out to, we're not necessarily looking for giants every podcast, but whenever you harvest a buck of that caliber, it's well worth some recognition.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it's an honor. It's an honor for us to have you on and hear the story. And the story will be with us on the podcast for, the rest of your life. It'll always be where your kids, your grandkids, and all your friends and family can hear the story. And it's hearing it from you is no better way than that to hear the story.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty cool when you can just say, hey, go push this button. You can hear the whole story. I'm going to sit here and drink some Busch Light. Let's turn up the speakers. That's awesome, man. Well, that just a commendable story, and you're just it's an honor to have you on the show. And man, you've done so much for the military, for the country. You've done so much for QDMA, and just for us on the Big Buck podcast to listen to that story from just an awesome individual, Mike. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
There's nothing better than talking to guys like Mike.
Yeah, great story. Great things he's got going with the QDMA, his program there. Wow, that's what we want to hear. We want to get into details on some different things that you can utilize in your area, and we did that.
Yes,
we put a lot of things on the table there that you may not have ever even known was possible.
And he's such a great dude. From starting with the bow in Afghanistan to the QDMA to harvesting a giant Ohio monster and still hunting in New York and organizing all that stuff up there. He's just one of those guys you want on your team constantly.
Yeah, it's a person that is obviously dependable for acknowledgement of deer in his area.
Yes.
He's taken his deer management to the next level by starting a program that he did on his own, and then he built a team. He figured out the program would work. He figured out how to run the program. He added in a team of members that will help him control the program. And now they're utilizing all their information to make their herd stronger. I mean, it doesn't get no better in my eyes than somebody that's making the moves and doing the steps that'll make the herd healthier.
I agree. So thanks again to Mike Montgomery for being on the show and telling us his story about the 203-inch Ohio giant that he shot. Any Chubby Tines tip of the week this week, Dusty?
Yeah, there is actually. It's something that I do on a regular basis. And you're hunting with a safety harness. Take time before you head out to the woods and lay that thing out and give it an overlook. Make sure that nothing's frayed or nothing's damaged. That safety harness is your lifeline, and make sure that it's in the best performing state that it can be in. It just takes a few minutes to look it over, check out all the straps, check out all the couplers, and be sure that your safety harness is going to work the proper way if you need it.
Gotcha. Good one. That's so important. I mean, I look at my straps and I always check them. Always. It just freaks me out about the things that might happen if I don't.
Yeah, it's that 3 or 4 minutes that you can take and lay that thing out on the ground and squat down or on your workbench and go over it.
It doesn't take much.
No, it doesn't take much at all. And it's one of the things that's going to save your life. So make sure that it's in, proper working condition and just take a few minutes and check everything out.
Yep, exactly. Well, we had a great time talking to Mike, and man, it's time to go, Dusty.
I hate to go. It's just a great story. I'm so impressed with what he's got going on with the QDMA. A great story with his bow getting ordered in Afghanistan, getting shipped home, coming home to it, and being able to harvest a great buck. That's hard to let go of.
It is. And we're going to be heading out ourselves, not just from the show, but we're taking the show to Indianapolis.
We are taking the show to Indianapolis, the ATA show. We're going to be live right there. We're going to have the mics with us. We're going to be able to do some recording right there at the show. We'll be able to walk around and grab, whoever we want to talk to right out of the audience. Whether it's a solo hunter, whether it's Michael Waddell, it's whoever we can get to talk with us and, get shows set up and check them out.
Yep. And we've had some responses already. We've had some people email me saying that they'd like to hook up with us at the ATA. So if you'd like, shoot us an email, ata@bigbuckregistry.com, or you can always shoot us a text at 724-613-2825. And just let us know you're going to be at the ATA show and that you want to hang out for a little bit when we get there. So looking forward to that, Dusty. How can we reach you offline and online when we're not on the podcast and when we're not at the ATA show?
Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors, Facebook.com/Antler Life. And you can also check me out, Facebook.com/Dusty Huntneck.
Awesome, man. Fantastic. So as far as reaching me over at Big Buck Registry, you can shoot us an email at j@bigbuckregistry.com. You can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/Big Buck Registry. Twitter is twitter.com/Big Buck Registry. Same theme with YouTube, youtube.com/Big Buck Registry. Always join us on iTunes if you're listening on some other network. If you are an Apple user, if you're not an Apple user, join us on Stitcher, and that's bigbuckregistry.com/Stitcher, STITCHER. And if you'd be so kind as to give us a review once you listen to the show if you like it, we would most graciously appreciate that. And Dusty, I think that's a wrap, man.
Awesome show, and man, I cannot wait to get back in the studios and do some more recording for our listeners. And we hope you enjoy. Give us a review on iTunes. Check us out. Share us. Tell everybody about us. We're going to take your hunt to the next level.
That we are. And we're going to take our own hunts to the next level, too. So next time will be after the ATA, so we're get that airplane fired up, get the Chevy ready, man. I'm coming.
Absolutely. I cannot wait for you to be here, and we're going to go there and capitalize on what we can get information for the show.
Exactly. I'm Jay Scott.
And I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast. See you next week.
Can't wait.